From New York City to Los Angeles, Powered Up Talk Radio is giving women of all ages permission to live the life they'd always dreamed of. Here are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Linda Franklin.
Hi, everybody. This is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Linda Franklin and Lisa Transcendence Brown. And oh my goodness, my soda's in the picture. We're going to take that out. I'm so excited today because we're going to talk about so many things. We're going to talk about surrender. We're going to talk about ego. We're going to talk about the big epiphany that I had this week, Linda and Lisa. It was so amazing because, I'm going through this refinance with my house. I've had some shifting in my company, which normally would cause my money fears, my anxieties to shoot through the roof. And they did a little bit. But Lisa, I remembered what you said about the ego talking, and I calmed myself down this week and I thought, what's the worst that can happen? I have to ask for some help. I have to go to the bank and ask for some help and get my loan modification. I might have to ask a family member to tide me over, through a slow time in my company. And I thought, if that's the worst that I have to deal with, I'm pretty blessed. And so I kind of pulled the ego out of it because it was really the fear and the embarrassment of not wanting to ask for help. So I turned it over to Spirit and I said, okay, Spirit, I need you to help shape this. If this is what I'm supposed to be doing and where I'm supposed to be living and how I'm supposed to be doing things, I'll do my best. And I'm going to ask you to do your best. And then I went to sleep and it was pretty cool.
Well, and that's beautiful that you share that, because I remember when I first started doing this process, one of the biggest things that we have with our ego is pride. And so we have all these prideful things that we have established that we think define reality and that define us and what's important and all that kind of stuff. And when we start this awakening process, so many things, the process is massive. You guys know, we could talk forever and never cover it all. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we take it in phases or pieces and parts, and we talk about that process or that phase. But when it was time for me to start, one of the early phases of awakening is moving beyond the pride, being willing to open up and basically admit to ourselves that we don't have it all under control on a human level. And so this is about moving beyond the need to control it all and expect that it's all going to turn out a certain way and getting okay. One of the things that we have to do is get okay with everything. You have to get okay with it all. Let everything go. Let all the drama, all the excuses, all that stuff, let it fall away. And then move from within the present moment. Move from this space in tune, in unison. And we have to open up to allow. Mm-hmm. In the early phases, we didn't open up to allow for things to occur because we were so fearful, so in control, so disconnected, so we had all of these modes that we functioned from. And it's really about stripping all that away and really being bare and wide open. And our human aspect doesn't like that. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Recognizing it for me was so hard because I had this vision of pride as people walking around, banging their chest going, I'm so great, I'm so great. I didn't know that pride was coming into play with asking for help or being vulnerable. Like those are epiphanies I've had over the past week. As I share some of these things to the public, it can be a little embarrassing. And then I'm like, wait a minute. We all go through this stuff.
Exactly. Well, and I'm going to say this to you. The stronger we were, the less we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Yes. And so a lot of us were tough, which that's our masculine ego energy, is the toughness. And that's the walls around our heart. And that's what keeps us in that place of separation. So it's really about allowing ourselves to be that vulnerable, to be that raw, to be that wide open. And when you say it can be embarrassing, that's judgment. Mm-hmm. It's all judgment. It's all fear. When you're dealing with the ego, it's all of what we call the lower emotions because it's a vibrational thing. And so eventually, me, I'm going to take it into which dimension it is, and I'm going to break it down and get into all that stuff. But to keep it really simple right now, we won't do that. Okay? Right now, it's the absence of a connection. And when you're in that absence of connection, you live in security mode, you live in safe mode, you live in survival mode.
Yeah,
you live in fear, protective, and no trust, no belief, no letting go, no surrender. We don't surrender. The strong don't surrender.
Right.
We fight with everything we got. Well, that's what causes all the suffering. That's where all the stuff is. And so everything is, when we've spent our whole life surviving, and that's the way we live, we don't even comprehend that there's a different way.
Right.
Because we live in a completely distorted place, and we don't even know we live in that distorted place. And so the moment that you said stop, and it's beautiful because we were going to talk about that today. So see how this goes? The moment you stop it all and say no, you brought yourself into presence.
Mm-hmm.
Brought your whole presence. You brought yourself into this place, and your vibration raised. And the moment you expand your consciousness, the moment you become present, everything else falls away, and you establish that place of trust. Even though you may not know, you have to have that trust. You have to have that connection above all. And we didn't have that connection in the beginning, a lot of us. There are a lot of people that are like, I always had that connection. But when you get into ascension, there's a difference in being awake. There's a difference in being an ascended being. And there's a difference in being these different aspects of ourselves. We can be awake all day long, but if we don't actually move in full alignment on a soul level, it doesn't do any good. You're just walking around saying I'm awake, and it's not a conscious act. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because one of the things I recognize, you use certain terms that help me figure out what's going on with me. You say things like, the lower vibration or the lower energies. And, as I kind of got myself in my worry fear mode, I was like, man, I feel crappy, and I feel tired, and I feel depressed, and I don't want to do anything. And I was like, well, what is going on here? And then I thought about what we talked about, and, Linda, you too. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm closing down. I'm shutting off. I'm disconnected. No wonder I feel lonely, abandoned, afraid,
no hope,
frustrated, no hope, the whole thing. And then I thought, I have to change this. So you're right. But I don't think, Lisa, that I wouldn't have recognized it if I didn't recognize the lower feelings. Like the lower feelings help me recognize, okay, I'm going down the wrong path here. I got on the wrong train. I need to make some changes. And then it was amazing. Even just the concept of recognizing it, you feel lighter.
It's huge, and it's powerful. And I'm going to say, throw the word wrong out. There is no wrong way to do this. There's a comfortable and an uncomfortable way. There's a way that brings you joy and a way that doesn't. And so it's really letting go of a lot of the duality words. Right and wrong are a judgment.
Okay.
And it keeps everybody in that loop cycle of you did it wrong, you did it right. There's a lot of battle when you bring those words in. It's like, it's really about what do you enjoy, what brings you peace, what brings you happiness. We have to make it about the feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you're not tuned into the feeling, you're tuned into a judgment. Right. And sometimes the feelings are not comfortable. That's the thing about it, is when we start to awaken, our heart starts to open, and we start to feel everything that we didn't know was there. And so the first reaction is to shut that down. I don't want to feel that, which is the opposite of what we have to do. We have to feel everything. It's just being conscious while you feel. Understanding the reason all these things are occurring, understanding and realizing that through that deeply connected state, that you're surrendering your ego. We're going to go into semantics in a moment, but this is a beautiful energy to be in. So let's stay here. You're surrendering your ego to your higher self. You're surrendering. You're not giving your power away. You're surrendering your third dimensional, your lower aspect, to your higher aspect, higher dimensional, higher self, whatever word you want to use. It doesn't really matter the words. It's the energy that matters. It's the understanding that matters. It's the comprehension level. So I'm noticing a lot of people using words, but they don't actually comprehend because they're not tuned in.
It's a whole different vocabulary. Sometimes you say words like even ascension. I'm sorry, I still don't quite know what that means. To me, I'm floating out of my chair. That's a hard one for me to get my brain around.
Well, that's because it's not a brain thing.
Yeah.
No,
That's because it's okay. It's supposed in the beginning, if you will. I use the in the beginning a lot. Every moment is the beginning, technically. So it doesn't really matter. It's a reference point.
Can I give a quick example of going from a different state to a different state? And I mean, Saturday I was a mess. I was missing Lucy. I was crying all day. I spoke to Sandra. She knows what a mess I was. I just felt, just completely alone and sad. And I recognize it. And, when I'm like that, I'll either listen to you, but on Sunday, I listened to Dolores Cannon. And in the morning, I listened to one of her videos, and the video I listened to was Life After Death. And she went into this whole thing about what happens after we leave our bodies.
Beautiful.
And it was so beautiful, and it was so wonderful, and it was just a confirmation of what I believed I knew. And then I just felt so light, like I was floating out of the bed, and I felt happy. And nothing around me changed. The circumstances didn't change. It's where my spirit was. I was in my heart, and I wasn't afraid of anything, and I felt like I was loved. And I know that there's so much more than I could believe, and all of that actually made me happy.
That's awesome.
But you can change it on a dime.
You can change it on a dime if you can. And so you said so much here, so bear with me just a moment. Okay, so here's the thing. Sandra, when you said about ascension, I'm going to come back to that in a moment, because you then followed it. It's hilarious, the words we speak. We don't even understand what we're saying.
Yeah.
You then followed it with floating out of my chair, which is hilarious, because ascension, you float.
Oh.
You're high. You're high on light for a while until it becomes your normal state of consciousness, and then you're not high, and you're always functioning from that higher place of consciousness. But in the beginning, gravity starts to go. We actually do start to float. It gets all weird and bizarre. And so I'm laughing at Sandra. She's like, what is this ascension? I don't understand. I just float out of my chair, and I'm laughing at you because ascension is elevating your consciousness back to your natural state of consciousness, which is pure. Okay. It is a return to what we lost connection with. It's a returning to a higher state of consciousness. We were all in a lower state of consciousness before. Okay. And so this isn't who did what and when and how and all the games that a lot of the ego plays. It doesn't really matter, because time is irrelevant. And so we're going to talk about time in a minute, but basically this is the vibration you function from, because the vibration you function from dictates your physical reality. So Linda, and I'm going to pop over to you. You guys know I go every direction here, and we just throw it all in the pot, because that's called quantum. We don't do anything linear. Linda, the moment that you chose to shift your energy and go do something that would elevate your consciousness, everything got easier, didn't it?
Absolutely.
That's what this is about, is each person being proactive. And I call it proactive consciousness. Okay. Or proactively conscious. It doesn't really matter what words we use. It's more the understanding. A lot of people in our early phases, we're like, I don't understand. What am I supposed to do? And we run around in a circle forever. It doesn't matter what you do. Do something. Do whatever it takes to get your vibration as high as you can. Do whatever it takes to open your heart. Do whatever it takes to elevate your consciousness out of that state. Yeah. Now, I'm going to come, Linda, for you. It's really important for everybody to understand, in order to transcend all of that stuff, you have to go through it. How we go through it changes, though. In the beginning, it's intense. In the beginning, it's a ridiculous amount of emotions. And so it's honoring those emotions, honoring your body is waking up. And we didn't know any of this until we did it, Okay. The body was asleep. The body was holding so much. The body is what anchors everybody in what we call the lower dimensional realms.
Okay.
But it is also, it was holding suppression. It was holding all this stuff. And the body was too dense. This is about getting our vibration as high as we can and keeping it there. And when we can't, understanding that that's an important place to be. It's about doing this consciously. And so whatever state we find, if you guys notice, a couple days ago, I woke up, we went through a massive blast. Every time we go through a cosmic blast of light encodements, source consciousness, I can use all these words, doesn't really matter, solar activity, all of this kind of stuff, galactic, we get into the galaxies and all this kind of stuff. Anytime we go through a massive bombardment of light, which is now 24 hours a day, it's not letting up, it's going to continue to accelerate, continue, because this is where we are. We are in all new realities. We live on a multidimensional earth. We always did. It's just that we didn't have the capability to do this before. Mm-hmm. Okay. The thing about it is if you guys noticed, a couple of days ago, I woke up after a massive night of photonic activity. And I learned in my early days, when I wake up and I'm in a certain place, in the early days, the words were just lay in the light. It's photonic light. It's the light of your soul. It's source consciousness. It's your new DNA. It's rewriting your DNA, literally. And so the other morning I woke up and I had a mile-long list of things I had to accomplish. And in that moment, it's like, nope, stay under. I'm like, okay. Just stayed in the bed for hours and hours and hours. I think I got up at 12:45, 1 o'clock. When the process is complete, you will wake up. Your body will wake you up. You'll still be foggy, groggy. You're going to walk around. This is a massive process of surrender and honoring a process so that our lives can be easier. Mm-hmm. We surrender to the integration of light so everything can be easier and more simple and not so complicated. It is breaking down the ego constructs. It's breaking down all of the ego stuff because that's the point. It's a reconstruction of our realities. It's aligning our realities with love and unity consciousness and pure source consciousness where everybody lives this way. Well, we didn't live this way to start with. No. And so it's a massive overhaul of everything, but we can either do it consciously in tune and on board and choosing to surrender and allow and choosing to shift our own energy. We have the capability to shift our energy just like you did, Linda. You're like, I'm going to go listen to something that might help me shift. Right. And in the beginning, I did this. My people, they do this. We all do this. And whatever it takes to shift you, whatever it takes to open your heart again. But a couple days ago, I woke up and we are all being taken deeper inside to the depths that we function from on a soul level. It is immense. It's the most beautiful, the most divine, the most exquisite place, but not if we got something going on. We have to clear all that stuff so that we can live from this beautiful, magnificent, magical, and amazing place inside.
You have to be willing to go through the process. And as you said at the beginning, the process is not easy. I was never a crier. And
I wasn't either.
I cry at the drop of a hat. I mean, I can be walking down the street and I'm crying. And you know what? I don't care. I just say, bring it on. I'm clearing.
Well, and I remember those days. I remember standing in the grocery store line and just pouring, boo-hooing at no reason. Just your heart is opening.
This comes like a wave. It just hits.
Your heart's opening. And when your heart opens, your body will release through the release of tears. Eventually, all the mourning and all the grief and all that stuff will go. Mm-hmm. You'll have moments. And I'm going back to a couple of days ago, I woke up after I went through all of that, mm-hmm. and I was in mourning mode. I was mourning. And what I had done was I went to look and see what was going down for other people around the world, because I call it virtual land, because it's not our reality, but I will check the collectives. And I was seeing all the people fighting, and I was seeing all the people doing all this stuff. And it just brought up this immense mourning for what people are going to go through. The heavy duty stuff. And I just went into a grieving mode and understanding my body was clearing. And if you can understand in that moment, the difference is I will actually write for people to assist them, because the moment I start writing, my energy shifts. I've used the information to assist other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I'm writing, the whole thing's shifting. And by the time I got done, I was all excited and happy and all that kind of stuff. And then people are going, yes, Lisa, we're going through the same thing the last few days, or they hit it the next day, because this isn't a linear time thing. This is a vibrational thing.
But I think it does, Lisa, I think it does all kind of correlate together, because there are times I have clients in Australia, in Israel, in Iran, and India, along as well as the United States. And it's uncanny how I can talk to all of these clients in the same week, and they're all reporting like variations on a theme.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how do you guys think that we have done all this all these years? We watch the themes. You can watch the collectives and see what people are going through. Everybody belongs to different collectives. And so Sandra, I'm going to say something about that in a minute, because technically we get into different aspects of multidimensionality with what you're talking about. Everybody you're talking to is a part of your reality. They're going to reflect back. And so, of course, they're going to all be going through the same things, because it's a vibrational existence. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But on top of that, we have different collectives, and when we are going through something, we are in tune with that collective. And so a lot of people don't understand. You have old earth, new earth, which are the words we use based upon vibrational frequency and the reality we actually live in. Yes, you will find themes, because on a sorry. No, I was going to say you will find themes because on a collective level, that's the energy that's clearing for tons of collectives at that time. That's why I learned years ago I could write about anything, and there will always be a collective going through that. It doesn't really matter what I write about. I learned to write and share in a way that assists people, that uplifts people, that inspires people, and shares the knowledge to awaken and assist and guide. But if I want to get up right now and write about grieving, there's going to be a whole group of people going through grieving. If I want to get up and write about bliss and magic, there's going to be a whole group of people going through bliss and magic. This is the way it works. The difference is, I mean, I can pick any topic and there's going to be a collective going through that.
Sure.
So it's just that we don't, on a human level, we don't understand everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in tune from within you, and you're fully present, and you're observing, and you're listening, and you're learning, and you're seeing, it's a different state of consciousness than trying to run the show.
Right.
And so this is about when Linda did what she did. She took an active measure to shift her energy because she was done grieving. She's like, okay, I'm done with all of this. I want to shift my energy. But when the immensity of it hits, you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, the importance is not so much about the grieving or the energy. It's about how we go through it, whether we go through it consciously and honor a very important process of our body releasing, purging, transcending, clearing, whatever words we want to use. When we're going through that, our body's tuning to a higher vibration. A lot of people don't understand that we're all going deeper. So every time we get hit with a bombardment of light, which is 24 hours a day, then anything unresolved inside of us, anything that isn't pure love, is coming up. That's the whole point. And we're going to keep going through it. What, sweetheart?
Including physical things that you feel in your body.
Everything. Yes, ma'am. Because, well, the physical things you feel are not what we think they are. Okay? The physical things we feel are a release of where that energy was held. Physical pain will equate to emotional pain for a while. Eventually, all that pain will go. There's no more pain. You have the occasional whatever, but when basically you're clearing heavy-duty programming, it's not comfortable. It's the most, let's face it, when we all start to wake up, it's the most challenging thing there is. It's not a fun experience at all.
I have Sally in here. I have see her right there in the corner.
Sally.
Come on, Sally.
Oh, hey, Sally.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Cool. It's really about understanding how important the whole process is. It's really about understanding that whatever we're going through is important, but then really putting things in perspective. This is about putting things in perspective. This is about shifting, learning to come into our own power from within us through a deeply connected place, that we have the power to shift the energy. So eventually, as each person goes through clearing the heavy duty stuff, you don't have the heavy duty stuff anymore. You might get hit with it every once in a while, but it really means moving into a place inside of yourself where you're not a victim to anything anymore. You're not giving your power any weight. You're not accepting less. And this is about evolving our consciousness, but it's on a DNA level. So Linda, when you talk about the physical stuff, in my early days, I learned to separate the emotion from the physical, work with them separately. Instead of, because for our human, I'm going to use 3D for a moment. Everything's a level of consciousness. So a lot of people focus on 3D saying it's 3D, it's the physical reality. Well, 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, they have physical realities too. The only difference is the level of consciousness that we function from. So our realities are very different than the previous dimension was, if you will. 5D functions from a state of pure love consciousness, unity consciousness, but it's also where everybody has just rebirthed themselves anew. And so the 3D and the 4D is like the shedding, the purging, the clearing of all of the programming and the conditioning and all the stuff that we all held. And so understanding that it all has to be done with our body. Our body housed it all. It's really learning to love and respect our body and stop the judgment, stop the finger pointing, stop the criticizing, stop the assuming, stopping the ego games that everybody played. It's really about becoming so conscious of yourself that you become responsible for you and your energy.
Lisa, when you started this whole transformation years back,
yeah,
did you at the beginning, did you have I guess a goal? Well, you know, I'm going through all of this, and now I'm going to go out and share it with the world, and I'm going to uplift humanity. And I mean, at what process, what time did actually something come in to say, oh yeah, this is the path I'm going to take now?
When my universe told me I had to, and I didn't have a choice.
Okay. Was that years in or months or?
Okay, so my process in the beginning, I used to say I fell backwards into all of this, upside down and inside out. I had no clue. Okay, I was the epitome of being deep asleep. And so when you're deep asleep, that means your heart is completely closed and none of this exists, and you're not willing to have any part of this. You're fighting and kicking and screaming against the whole thing, which is what I did. Those are the roughest realities to wake up through, because basically when it's time to wake up, our universe, which is us, okay, so becoming the whole universe again, you actually become the whole universe. You will actually be floating out in space. It's a very weird, bizarre experience, okay? When it was time for me to wake up, waking up means your heart is going to open.
Yeah.
And you're going to vibrationally shift out of the previous dimensions of fear and lack and give your power away and believing the BS and playing in the BS and the drama games and all this kind of stuff. When it was time for me to wake up, I basically had to go through it blindly. I didn't have teachers and guides like the typical person has access to now. When I came through it, not to say that there weren't others who had done this, because there are. In my reality, there weren't.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had to fall through it myself. And on top of that, the role models I did have didn't hold any integrity. So I had to learn what not to be. Yeah. I had to go through all of those that were extremely lack of integrity, lack of this, lack of that, because it shows you the distortions. You get to see your reality. You get to see what not to be. And it actually causes us to stand up and become, to live from that place that we're supposed to live from, that's very pure. Is when we're faced with all of the lack, it causes us to go the other direction, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I delved into Dark Night. It was called Dark Night of the Soul, but I renamed it Dark Night of the Ego, because your soul is pure. Right. It's just everything else is ego. And so when you're going through all of that, then you're delving into the abyss. You're delving into everything and you're hitting rock bottom. And I went through that for the intensity for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
One day I woke up, and that's when you're going through the rapid aging process that you guys were asking me about. I looked about 10 years older, 10, 20 years older, like really fast. Previous to that, you de-age, and then it reverses and you start going through a rapid aging process because you're going through ego death. And ego death is the death of the ego, the dissolution of the ego is a breaking down of those constructs.
Mm-hmm.
All of the separation, all of that stuff that we carried, it's basically thrusting us into our heart opening, and we don't have any control.
Right. Or choice.
Or choice on an ego level.
Right.
And so, but basically what's happening is we are dissolving and resolving the separation within ourselves so our heart can open enough so we can unify on a soul level inside so that our soul can come through.
Right.
And before that, we didn't have that capability, which is why we all have to go through all of that stuff to whatever degree and however, I spent like 40 years asleep. So it was intense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never just this existence, it's all of them. So we actually expand our consciousness to see everything. I remember one morning I woke up and all the heaviness was gone. Up until that point, I couldn't go outside. I felt everything. It was too intense.
Yep.
It's overwhelming to the nervous system, which is a part of the waking up process. When it becomes too overwhelming and when your body's trying to tune to a different vibration and clear, then you won't be able to be around the things you used to be. All those things are really distorted and they overwhelm your body. That's a part of your light body activating. And we don't understand this stuff at the time.
So how do you do this if you have kids or a husband or
you simplify your life.
Say that again?
You simplify your life.
You simplify your life.
You cut everything else that isn't highest aligned, you cut it out. Our human ego will stay caught up in the old stuff and go, I don't have time. And it's funny because you brought that up. The slower we go inside, the more in tune we are, the less time exists, the more time we have.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
When your head's in control, you are in a disconnected state. So you are functioning through linear time. You actually have to consciously shift out of your head and move into full presence. When you're fully present within the moment and you're focusing your energy, you have all the time in the world, you're moving. It's your head that speeds time up.
Mm-hmm.
But during that 4 years when you were going through this really tough process, were you able to work? I mean, did you bring in any kind of income? I mean, how does
everybody's circumstances are different. And at the point, okay, so I was working 75 hours a week. I was a workaholic because we're worker. A lot of us who carry really strong Syrian energy, we're workers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was working 75 hours a week and my universe kept trying to guide me and I kept refusing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to listen. And so I kept going, no, I'm not listening. And I kept doing my own thing. Well, at some point, this is your ego refusing to listen. This is the separation. So at some point, your universe is going to take over and say enough's enough, which is what my reality did.
right?
And a year before I got ready to leave, the company I worked for told us they were going to start laying everybody off. I was luckily the last to go. I was there for a year, but I got laid off, which was devastating to a workaholic because then you're delved into all of this stuff. And so, but I spent the next couple years, I pulled completely away and started focusing on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I had just entered a new relationship. Our universe, when I talk about our universe, it's us. It's just a higher vibration than we are when we're human. But once you merge as a universe, then you are the universe. There's really nothing else outside. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so at one point, I had just entered a new relationship. My universe was like, this is a gift. You at one point, it was, you have food on your plate. You have a bed to sleep in. Get up and get busy and start working in service.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned the reason we had things. I learned that as long as I had, at one point it was pay your rent, everything up in advance. Now get to work. Stop focusing on whether you're going to have enough money. If you focus your energy, by the time you get around to that point in time, you'll have enough money. But if you spend all your time worrying about it, you will have wasted the whole time and not done anything at all. And so part of the process is learning to focus your energy. Part of the process is being so in tune on a consciousness level that you're listening. And when you're listening and in tune, you get shown and seen what to do. Well, our human aspect doesn't function from the present moment. We're often all these other times. I had to learn how to get present first. And for me, I had to listen to my universe telling me how. Mm-hmm. And at one point, it was, the thing about it is your universe becomes your best friend. It's who you talk to. It's who answers you. You basically have to let go of all this stuff and be okay with looking a little bit crazy and talk to yourself 24 hours a day. Seriously. And I'm going to answer you in a minute, Linda, but I have to go all the way around the world to make sense, okay? In the beginning, it was my universe telling me to let all other times go. Get out of the future. Get out of the worry. Get out of the fear. Yep. Become so present within the moment that I was conscious within this moment, and I was understanding that those moments come as a vibrational response to what I'm doing from this moment right here.
Yes.
And to be so present within this moment that what I was creating was going to return a vibrational reality that was going to bring joy and support humanity and all these things. It meant me getting up every day and being in dedicated service and listening to what my universe told me to do. My ego didn't want to do any of this. Mm-hmm. So answer to your question, Linda, none of this was visible to me. I knew, I was shown I had important roles for humanity that I was going to, but I didn't get to see anything in the beginning, because it's kind of like in the beginning you get pieces and parts. This is a vibrational reality. Until each one of us have proven. I'm talking, I have to go into a place of separation right now. You have a human ego aspect and you have a higher self, universal aspect, cosmic, whatever you want to get into, all of these things. Source consciousness, it's different levels of consciousness, okay? But let's do two. My ego, me, had to surrender and let my higher self tell me what to do 24 hours a day. And I had to basically agree to be led around blindly without any answers in at all. And I had to learn to trust. The whole few years was learning to trust and listen. The thing about it is, it wasn't my universe that couldn't be trusted. It was me on a human level. It was me not bringing my ego back in. It was me learning to listen. It was me surrendering. It was me I had to learn to surrender my ego enough to where my ego didn't come back in. Mm-hmm. And so it takes, for some of us, for me, it took years of every day surrender, every day listen, every day do what I was told. My ego had to learn to take instructions. Egos don't like to take instructions.
No.
And so the thing about it is that we all have to learn to surrender our lower self. It's our lower self. It's our lower vibrational aspect of ourself. It's our third dimensional aspect of us that lives in an unconscious place. I had to learn to listen 24 hours a day and do what I was told. Sometimes my universe, and sometimes it's just a feeling, okay? Sometimes it's just a thought.
But you can tell the difference.
You can tell the difference because of the softness or the power or the vibration of the thought.
Okay.
The feeling of it.
Kind. It's not demanding.
It depends.
Oh, it can be demanding. It can be insistent.
Like when you're Syrian aspect, or even God consciousness, when it comes in, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Mm-hmm. When we go into whiny ego mode and I don't want to do this, your higher self will actually say you don't have it. There were many times that I didn't want to do any of this, and my universe or my Syrian aspect would come through and tell me, you don't have a choice. Step up, Lisa.
Yep.
There were many times that I was told to do weird, bizarre things that when you get into multidimensionality, none of it makes any logical sense. Mm-hmm. I had to start writing and sharing the weird things. None of this had been done before. And so I was told, I got to see, and you're told it's the same thing eventually. that I agreed before ever incarnating or walking in here to fulfill these roles, and fulfilling my roles was the highest level soul agreement that I had to fulfill here, and that nothing got in the way of that. And that was the most important thing. And when there were times that I would walk around my bedroom whining, because that's just your ego, complaining, that's just your ego. And I would be like, I'd be talking to myself. I don't want to do this. And it's like, you don't have a choice. You agreed to do this, step up. And that's what you'll get taught eventually. There are different phases of this process. I had to learn how to be. When we lived busy lives and we worked, we don't know how to just be.
Well, and it avoided all of the responsibilities that we had. When I look at the difference, Lisa, between now and when everything, I call it, my whole existence crashed apart. And I woke up one day, and the day I surrendered, the next day my ex-husband moved out. Yep. Everything changed. It started to unfold. And basically I just turned it over. For me, I talked to God. So I'm like, you know what, God, I can't do this anymore. I got these 2 little babies. You need to do something. And I remember holding each one. I had one on each side, and I was crying because the tears went into my ears. And I just laid there and said, you know, God, you've got this. You have to, you put me here. You have things for me to do. I can't do them. I need you to fix it. And I was really clear. And then I'm like, it's all yours. Yeah. And that was not like me at all. I mean, I was the go-to girl. I could get it done. I never complained. I just work. And I took care of everybody. So the idea of me surrendering and asking for help
is unheard of.
And releasing.
Yeah.
But do you think that's why, like, I think, and I mean this with all respect, you were a tough nut to crack. I think I was a tough nut to crack. Right. Is that why it was so hard? And,
Yeah. The thing about it is that the tougher we are, the harder the ride.
Yeah.
And we don't understand that in the beginning. No. It isn't until we actually go through it all and long enough and so many times that we actually understand how all this works. I had to go through this repeatedly over and over until I understood. Yeah. Which is why those of us who do what we do, the reason we teach, the reason we guide is to make it easier for others so they don't have to go through it to the extreme and all the loss and all that kind of stuff that we did. That is the way that's necessary for those who refuse to surrender their ego to their higher self. It's called union. You're coming into union as a higher self. You're coming into union. The ego is all the lack.
Yeah.
The ego is the separation, and it's what kept us in that unconscious state before. So it's really coming to understand that the ego doesn't serve anybody anymore.
No.
And so this where we are right now is for everybody who chose to awaken, whatever capacity. And I'm going to come back, Sandra, because it's really important to understand. The ego has to go through a breaking point. Mm-hmm. It will hold on until the very last breath.
Yes.
Unless we choose to break our own ego down and dissolve it ourselves, which is the easier path. And so once we start to understand, all you have to do is observe your ego. Stop fighting it. It's not a battle with the ego. There is and I break it down into 4. In the beginning, you have the human masculine, feminine, which is all ego, but they have different energies. Then you get into a bazillion different ones. So I'm not going into that depth. But then you have the divine masculine, divine feminine, which are very different energies. They're very pure. Divine masculine is going to be very powerful. Divine feminine is pure love. Mm-hmm. But it's not tied to anything. It's right. Just pure love. It's just love. There is no other. Everybody says, but what about this? It's with everything stripped away. It's this divine essence, this presence, this love that we feel that is so connected with everything. It's very pure. Mm-hmm. And it's on a soul level. And so when you were talking about when our realities seem to be collapsing, we're all being moved into a higher vibrational reality, but we don't understand that. We're kicking and screaming because it isn't the way that we thought.
Right.
I used to say, this isn't Burger King. You don't get it your way.
Well, and it wasn't what I was building. You know, I had built this castle. I built this company,
We
built
all did.
this, and then
Yes.
it was stripped away from me. But now, like 10 years later, I look at it as the greatest gift.
Exactly. And the thing about it is that when you get to the other side of once we go through, it's called the Rainbow Bridge, and basically crossing over to the other side, and all you're doing is elevating your consciousness, so you return back to your higher states of consciousness for where you function from. Mm-hmm. This whole thing is about elevating the consciousness of humanity so that everybody functions from this place. Elevating the consciousness of humanity so that everybody works together in unison and comes from that loving and kind and respectful place. And so it's a returning to pure presence. It's a returning to pure love, where everybody has to live this way or you get the other reality.
Right.
And so what we don't understand is when it's time to wake up, our whole reality does flip upside down. That's the whole point. Yeah. We don't live in linear realities anymore. We live in quantum ones. And quantum realities are very different than linear realities. They're the opposite for a while. What everybody doesn't understand is that we all came here to have a human experience. For galactics, it's called the human experiment. Okay. You can call it whatever you want to. But when it's time to actually start the ascension process of ascending your consciousness, your human reality starts to shift and change. Mm-hmm. And so when I started observing and seeing that each one of us will work to build the human dream, work to build in identities and attachments and things and all this kind of stuff, when it's time to wake up, all that stuff goes.
Right. And I had to move. Like I didn't have to move. I wanted to move. I couldn't. I was living in the city. I was living in, Beverly Hills, and there was so much energy. And I used to look at this one tree that was a jacaranda tree that I could see from my balcony. And I was like starved for this tree. And I just loved this tree. And there was so much noise and so much, and not just noise, like energetic noise.
It's energetic noise. Yes, it is.
And then so when I folded out of my company there and everything, and I moved up into the mountains, people thought I was insane. I went from this city existence to, this ranch existence with 7 dogs. Everybody told me, oh, she's gone nuts. She's gone insane. But I had to get quiet. I had to get peaceful. I had to change everything.
Yeah. And nature becomes a necessity. Because it holds the purest vibration. And so when everybody calls it a soul awakening, but basically it's your human awakening so your soul can come through. So a lot of people, your heart opens so that you can align and tune. A human reality and a soul aligned reality are opposite things. And so the reason it feels like our whole world gets turned upside down is because we are going to be going in the opposite direction for a while. Mm-hmm. Until we bring our whole life into alignment on a soul level. And we're literally rebirthing ourselves through photonic light. We are rebirthing ourselves. Our body goes through an immense process of clearing and raising its vibration and a whole lot of stuff that doesn't make any linear logical sense. We actually have to integrate photonic light on a daily basis. Every day is dedicated to integration. That's our, everybody, we become gatekeepers and grid keepers and all these cool words. And you got to get okay with looking crazy and being crazy, because multidimensionality doesn't fit into linear anything. You're going to look crazy for a while.
I know, but you feel so good.
But it's awesome. That's the thing about it. And I used to say, embrace the crazy.
Yeah.
What you're doing is getting over the judgment of the whole thing. Everybody's got to release all that judgment. That judgment is what keeps everybody bound to those. When we start talking in higher and lower, we're talking in dimensions and frequency bandwidths. Mm-hmm. Okay. All this is the more present you become. This is a whole body experience though. So this takes your whole being to do this. You can't just do it with your head and the rest of you off somewhere else and you're not connected or in tune. This is about being in tune and connected all the time. I call it being in communion. Mm-hmm. Notice what you do in nature. You're in communion. It's communication and union. It's a deep sacred connection from within us where you can feel that love, or you can feel that beauty. But third and fourth dimension is returning to the fifth dimension and rebirthing like a little child, the innocence, the play, the wonder, the excitement, the letting go of everything and learning how to just be. It is freedom. Yes, it is.
Freedom for me. Like you can't imagine what it feels like. It's beautiful.
Yes. It's this bliss, it's this magic, but then it's learning to live this, but then start to fulfilling roles. And so we live this bliss, this magic, and we fulfill our higher purpose roles here. And because everything that we do is for humanity. We become the humanitarians. Everything in our life is full service. Now, I'm going to say this to make a point. When you're purging and you're clearing, or you're laid out and you can't do anything else, that is a part of your service to humanity. It just doesn't look very pretty. It's not understood by the typical. If you measure your realities by a 3D level of consciousness, then you're going to stay in the loop cycle of what's appropriate, what's expected, and what's right or wrong and all that kind of stuff. When you move and elevate your consciousness, the integration of light and raising your vibration and your light body and your soul aligned realities here are the most important thing there is. It becomes our priority. You don't compromise on that ever again.
And it's not hard. Like, that's the other thing. Like,
it's only hard if your ego's in control.
Yep. Because I do. Every once in a while, I'll pop back into that ego side of me that's like, I need to play. I need to. And whenever I start saying the words I need, like that, I know I'm in the wrong space. And I know it's wrong as judgment, but it's not the right place for me. And I need to shift.
Change words from wrong to aligned or not aligned.
Okay, aligned.
Because it brings it into vibrational alignment, what's aligned for you and what's not. Because you're talking about vibrations when you're using the word aligned. And energetics, which our soul works from a quantum state of consciousness. And so when you are in alignment and fully in tune on a soul level, you are functioning from a quantum state of consciousness. When you are separated and your heart is closed and your head is kicked back in and you're playing out the loop cycles, the karmic timelines, and all these words that we use, humans get all caught up in the words instead of actually really feeling and listening and shifting and stuff like that. This isn't about the words. This is about the energy. Right. This is about the vibration. This is about really, truly getting this with every fiber of your being and being that on board with everything. As each person truly, truly, truly surrenders and opens up to allow, what we're doing is allowing ourselves to have the most magnificent realities here, the things that bring us the most joy. This is what the human aspect fears. What we're allowing is pure peace. What we're allowing is bliss and magnificence. And the thing about it is a fifth dimensional reality and way above. A lot of us have gone way beyond the fifth dimension. Okay, fifth dimension is the beginning for every one of us. It's a returning to consciousness. You arrive there as you hold this vibration. You arrive, this becomes your reality when you live this with your every breath. So Linda, when she's like, nothing happened outside, it was all inside. That's how this is. Outside becomes a vibrational response to you. Last night I was walking through my kitchen. And you're so deep inside and you're so in tune and you're having all these conversations and you're in observance and it's all beautiful and magical and blissful and amazing. And there's nothing really going on outside. It's this adventure in every moment. The thing about it is it's new discovery. The thing about it is our human aspect doesn't like that part, doesn't like surprises, wants to control everything. It can't play.
Right.
It can't let go. And so learning to let go so that you can play, learning to let go is a part of the process. And then what happens is I still play. I just play while I work.
Right.
I live in my magic while I work in service. You can either live from that beautiful in-tune place inside and everything can be simple and easy, or you can live in chaos and drama and all that stuff inside. It's a part of the inner matrix and what's happening. is that we have an old matrix system and we have a new one.
Mm-hmm.
What people don't understand when we talk about New Earth is New Earth is a completely different system. It's a new one. It's one that we all create. It's one that we all build. It's one where we all connect and we come together, all of us. We're the new. We're the change. We're the difference, every one of us. And the beauty is all of those who were the workers before, the really logical ones, we're also the ones that understand everything here because we tend to look at everything and see everything. And I wrote a thing years ago about the more logical we were. For a while, that's actually our biggest barrier, but it becomes our greatest gift.
Yes.
Because what happens, Linda, she's like, yay! All that. What I started understanding, when you're in observation mode, when you're functioning from a quantum state of consciousness, pure presence, when you're just being, when you're just in tune completely, you're seeing how everything works. And what happens is it all becomes quantum mechanics. It all becomes quantum. It's all logistics and algorithms and equations and physics. And that's our language of our soul.
Yeah.
And so this is not stuff we read in a book. It's a life we live from a pure existence where all the knowledge is. It's inside. It's in your DNA. All of the codes as a peacekeeper, all of the codes, my new word is code speaker, because I speak light codes, light encodements, and I translate everything through light, and I speak it in light, and we're code speakers, which is kind of cool. It's like new.
It's like Navajo code talkers, for the present day.
The difference is when you're in that place, that space, and you are so deeply in tune, you understand everything. There's no questions. You have all the answers to it's everybody getting to that place. Yeah. And that's what the journey is for each person that's awakening, is to return to that place, that space inside of you. So now I'm going to say this: when you're functioning from that space, that deeply connect, there is no time. When you disconnect, we function from a space of consciousness, whereas human aspects, 3D, 4D, function from linear time.
Got it.
Okay. I don't function from linear time. I see linear time. I understand it. I have learned how to maneuver, and linear becomes an energy that we utilize. So when the rest of the world is going through hell, I'm using that linear to produce and accomplish. I'm not going through hell. Right. That linear energy becomes what we use. It's really hard to function in the higher dimensions from inside of us, from a non-linear state of consciousness, and still function linearly for a while. It's going to be a challenge for a lot of people because you have to acclimate to these frequencies, and you're walking around foggy, groggy, and you're in a lucid, dreamy state. And basically what we do is you wake up out of old illusions into awakening, into activating higher consciousness dream realities that you're going to anchor here. And so it's a very different existence than the old realities were. You're basically surrendering your whole human life for a new one. You're going to create it. You're going to build it. You're going to do it yourself. It's going to be so completely aligned on a soul level. Your realities don't collapse on a soul level, by the way.
All right, I got to take us to the end of the show. That was such a beautiful note to end on. We're visiting today with Lisa Transcendence Brown. Her website is awakeningtoremembering.com. You're going to want to sign up for her newsletters and her blog articles. They're fascinating. On behalf of myself and my lovely co-host in New York City, Linda Franklin, we'll be back again soon.